Does this sound familiar? Over the past few years, you've had some weight gain. The number on the scale has been creeping up higher and higher. It wasn't all that noticeable at first, but over time it kept adding up. And now your clothes aren't fitting the same, you feel less energetic, and you're not loving the way that you look. But you're not alone. It's a common problem, and I see it again and again with clients. And there's no judgment here. Being overweight doesn't mean that you're lazy or that you lack willpower. In fact, you've probably tried really hard to lose weight at one time or another, and just couldn't make it work despite the honest effort. If you haven't had success in the past, it's not that you failed, it's that your system has failed. So I want to offer you a framework that you can use to lose weight and keep it off in 2024. I want you to feel better, look better, perform better, and have more energy this upcoming year. Because if you don't do it now, then when? First, let's reframe the problem. The words overweight, fat, or obese are all loaded terms. They have a lot of negative stipulations that go with them. So instead of these terms, let's talk about what's technically going on. You're storing more fuel than necessary. And that's it. If we can create a strategy that will burn more fuel than you're replacing, we'll have weight loss success. And the first question is, why is weight loss so hard? Well, there are three main reasons. Reason number one, habits. The habits that got you to your current state are deeply ingrained, and they become automatic and very tough to break. Number two, poorly defined goals. There's no specific end point or time to arrive there. It's easy to say, I want to lose weight, or I'd like to drop 20 pounds, but that's not specific enough to make it actionable. Just like taking a road trip, we need an exact destination in mind and a date to arrive there. Reason number three is identity, and this is the sneakiest reason. Everybody has a concept of themselves in their mind. We call this our identity, and it's really, really hard to behave in a way that doesn't feel congruent to our identity. And in other words, we only operate within our current view of ourselves. Even with a clear goal in mind, the likelihood of success is pretty low if we don't update our view of ourselves. We're going to address all of these obstacles with our goal realization framework. There's a formula for success that we can follow. Craft an identity, make a meaningful goal, outline a plan, determine adherence, construct habits, maintain motivation, navigate and track progress. Step number one is to craft an identity. Trying to achieve a goal that conflicts with the way you think of yourself is an exercise in futility. And here's an example. Someone who sees themselves as poor will behave in a way that keeps them poor. And even if they do manage to come upon some money, they're going to quickly find ways to get rid of it so they can once again align themselves with the identity of being poor. And the same goes for weight loss. 90% of the people who achieve their weight loss goal rebound and add it back on and then some. For long-term success, we need to update our identity. It might sound a little silly and it might not be easy, but it can be done, and I think it must be done if you want to have long-term success. So, here's your first task. Take a pen and paper, go into a room with no distractions, and write about the person that you wish to become. You're crafting your new identity. How do you want to look? More importantly, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel walking into a room of strangers or your family? What's it feel like when you're trying new clothes on, or when you're doing active things? On this exercise, you really need to go deep. So set a timer for at least 30 minutes, if not an hour. Make sure you have no distractions. Use a pen and paper, no computers, because the act of writing will make it feel more visceral and real. And don't hold back. Write out the vision you have for yourself. This is your new operating system. You are actually writing the source code for how you'll be in the world. The clearer the picture in your mind, the more you begin to operate with this new mindset. Now, anytime you're faced with a decision that will impact your weight loss goal, think, what would lean Mark do? And when you come up with the answer from your new identity, you're going to have the right answer. If creating a new identity seems like an insurmountable task, then try this. You can create an alter ego. It's an idea that Todd Herman outlines in his book, The Alter Ego Effect. It's a great read. Think of Kobe Bryant's Black Mamba on the basketball court or Beyonce's Sasha Fierce. An alter ego allows you to get out of your own way so your best self can step forward and take charge. We naturally do this as kids, and surprise, surprise, it works for adults too. And you can give your alter ego a name like Lean Lenny or Marky Sixpack. Think of how they would behave in different situations. And now step into their shoes, both figuratively and maybe literally. It's helpful and useful to use an object to activate your alter ego. It could be a set of gym clothes, or a ring that you put on, or a water bottle that supercharges you whenever you drink whatever's in there. This is something that just allows you to step out of your ordinary world and act as your new best self. Now that you've crafted your new identity, it's time to set your first goal. And a 90-day goal is ideal. It gives you enough time to put in the work, make significant progress, and course correct when necessary. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a year goal, and in fact, it's a good idea to have a long-term goal in mind. But it can be a little disheartening when you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel because it's so far away. So operating in 90-day bite-sized chunks is a really good idea. So here's your second task. Grab another pen and piece of paper, go into that same distraction-free room, and write out your 90-day goal. It should be clear enough that anyone can understand it, and you'll know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you've achieved it. For example, I want to lose weight is a poor framing of your goal. How will you know when you've achieved it? If you wake up and you're 5 ounces lighter, does that mean you've had success? We need to be more specific. I'll lose 15 pounds in the next 90 days, going from a body weight of 200 to 185 is a smart way to put it. Literally specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. If you're wondering what a realistic weight loss goal is, generally a loss of half a pound to 2 pounds per week is considered healthy and sustainable. But it does depend on how much you have to lose to get to your ultimate goal. If somebody has an ultimate goal of dropping 80 pounds, they'll start to see a faster drop than somebody who's trying to lose the last 10. We also need to track progress and make sure things are going in the right direction. It's good to have two methods of assessing progress. One that's quantitative, a number that we can look at, and the other that's quantitative. If you have more than 25 pounds to lose for your long-term goal, then the scale's a good quantitative tool to use. Tracking first thing in the morning every day is great, as long as it doesn't have too much of a negative impact on you psychologically. The more data points we have, the better. If you have less than 25 pounds to lose, you could use the scale for tracking, or you could also use something like an InBody or a DEXA scan every maybe 1 to 4 weeks to make sure things are going in the right direction. It's also helpful to have a qualitative goal. This could be something as simple as how you feel your clothes are fitting, taking physique photos that you can look at every single week, or noticing your daily energy levels. Even though you're not putting a number to them, these can be good indications that you're on the right track and making progress. Now that we have a specific goal and a time to achieve it, as well as a way to track progress, it's time to write our plan. Now we get to the good stuff, the specific behaviors you'll do to get you to your goal. For weight loss, we'll need to have habits for nutrition, physical activity, and recovery. And we need to think about how much time and effort you can commit to each of these categories. In other words, we have to determine our adherence level. People generally fall into one of 3 levels of adherence: high, medium, or low. The high adherence person can dedicate a lot of effort to their new habits and stick with them the majority of the time. The high adherence person makes big life changes. They have to put in an abnormal amount of time into their plan and execute it precisely. A high adherence plan might seem cumbersome at first, but with great effort comes great reward. They'll be on the fast track to hit their goal, and they make progress really quickly. A moderate adherence person can dedicate a fair amount of time to their plan. They usually implement their habits about 80 to 90% of the time and avoid potential pitfalls without being as strict as our high adherence counterparts. Most people who are ready, willing, and able to make a change will do very well in this category. Progress is steady, but not quite as rapid as our high adherence friends. Of course, a fair amount of effort is required, but it's not quite as time-consuming as a high adherence plan. A low adherence person can only make small changes at the moment. The best strategy for them is to implement 1 or maybe 2 habits that are easy to execute, which will lead to some positive results. For these clients, progress will be slower, but remember, slow progress is better than no progress. Sticking to a simple plan can be life-changing for these people. Keep in mind, your adherence level can change over time. Think about your current life circumstances and get an honest idea of how much time and energy you can commit to the process. Only take on as many new habits as you can sustain at once. A plan that's too overwhelming always backfires. Now let's talk about habits. I like to think of the weight loss process, somewhat ironically, as a 2-layer cake. The biggest layer at the bottom is nutrition. It's even bigger than exercise. If somebody's in a caloric deficit, they're going to lose weight, whereas somebody who exercises can still overconsume calories. Of course, exercise is still really important, And that's why it's the second layer, specifically strength training. Building some muscle gives you a calorie-burning engine that works around the clock. So even if your workouts themselves aren't burning a ton of calories with strength training, the added muscle works for you 24/7. It's like making an internal engine that just burns calories all the time. Cardio is like the icing on the cake. In terms of weight loss, it's a relatively small part of the equation. And don't get me wrong, it's super important for cardiovascular health and your heart and lungs and your general well-being. But it's not a really efficient way to go about training for weight loss. First up, nutrition. Let's talk about our 5 most effective nutrition habits. Number 1, track what you eat. Just writing down the foods that you have on a daily basis will bring some awareness to your intake and help you make healthier choices. And what are healthier choices? Well, simply put, more natural and less processed foods. If your food had roots or eyeballs in the recent past, it's probably a better choice than something that's lived on the shelf for a long time and has a huge list of ingredients. Number 2, plan your meals. This means writing out your grocery list so you're not playing a guessing game at the grocery store, and then making a strategy for the meals that you'll have during the week. Number 3, the next step, prepare your meals. It would be nice if we could make them fresh every time we go to sit down and eat, but most of our schedules don't allow for that. So finding some time to prepare meals in bulk sometime during the week so you can easily grab them out of the fridge and just chow down is a really good strategy. Do your best to make them tasty. Yeah, healthy food can taste good as long as you have a few simple recipes under your belt. Number 4, get the bad stuff out of the house. Anything that you have in your kitchen that doesn't serve your goal should be eliminated. Give it away or throw it away, because if it hangs out in your house, chances are that you're going to indulge in it during a moment of weakness. And I know nobody wants to waste food, but in this case, it's better to put it in the garbage than to put it in your body. Number 5, plan to be off plan. Have 1 or 2 meals per week where you indulge a little bit. Have something tasty and maybe a bit more than normal. Just don't go too bananas. A delicious Italian dinner or some tacos with friends is a great choice, but something like a whole pizza followed by a half dozen donuts is not a good choice. And trust me, I know from experience it'll leave you with a massive stomachache. And here's a bonus. If all of this seems really time-consuming, you could always outsource the process. You could find a meal prep service that will deliver fresh and healthy meals to your home each week, and even though it costs a little bit more, it saves you a lot of time and effort. You can think of it as the 6-pack tax. I've had some clients who have outsourced their entire nutrition plan, and it's worked really well. Just made things nice and streamlined so they didn't have to think about it or put in a monumental effort into their nutrition. Next, we've got exercise and training habits. And this is a really important piece to the weight loss puzzle. Let's talk about the frequency, intensity, time, type, and enjoyment of your training. For frequency, 30 to 60 minutes, 5 days per week should be enough to get great results. 3 of those sessions should be strength training, which could be done at the gym or even at home. The other 2 days should be moderate intensity cardio. Of course, you could do more than this. It's just an effective starting point. In terms of intensity, if you're just starting out, most of your training can be and should be at a moderate intensity. This means on a scale of 1 to 10, you're at about a 5 or a 6. As you progress in your training, you can increase the intensity of your workouts. For type and enjoyment, well, in terms of strength training, the basics work incredibly well. That's why they're the basics. Focus on movements that use a lot of muscles and you get the most bang for your buck. Things like squats, lunges, deadlifts, pushes, pulls, and core exercises should be staples in your program. If you want a little more detail, feel free to shoot me a message and I'll help you with some specifics. For cardio, we want to be at a place that's challenging but not complete misery. So hopefully you can find something that's somewhat enjoyable. If you don't like to run, then don't run. Try swimming, biking, group exercise, cardio, kickboxing, something like that. Chances are, if you enjoy the activity or at least don't hate it, you'll stick with it a little bit longer. Last but not least, rest and recovery habits. Now that you're active and fueled well, you're going to need some time to rest and recuperate. This is the rebuilding phase. This piece of the puzzle is largely underappreciated. And let's be clear, being constantly stressed is not healthy, and only sleeping 5 hours a night, not healthy either, and it will severely limit your progress. Here are the biggest wins for rest and recovery. First is a nighttime routine. Set a recurring alarm about 45 minutes before you want to go to bed. This initiates your shutdown routine. Put the phone and computer away, maybe take a shower, brush your teeth, and try to relax for a little while. Something like easy stretching or reading a little fiction can prepare your mind and body for the relaxation that we want during sleep. We also want to curate your sleep environment. This means making your bedroom your fortress of solitude. Keep the temperature cool at night, make it as dark as possible, or use an eye mask, and keep electronics out of the room, especially your phone. You can always use a white noise machine to prevent random sounds from disturbing you through the night. In terms of quantity, do your best to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. Now, I know it might not happen every night, but if you have a plan in place, like your nightly shutdown routine, it's more likely that you'll get the quantity that you need along with the quality. Other recovery methods are also important. And it's a good idea to have a menu list of activities that you can choose from. Things like time in nature, self-massage, meditation, reading, yoga, breath work. These are all great practices that can aid in the healing process. Next, we make the vehicle. If we put the right habits in place, they're going to bring us right to our goals. And I know that sounds simple, but not so fast. It's difficult to do things that we're not used to, and it's also difficult to stop doing things we're really accustomed to. It's a big change to create new habits, so we want them to be as streamlined as possible. We want to remove any unnecessary friction so that we have a well-oiled machine. We decide the habit we need in place, and we constantly see how we can eliminate sticking points along the way. We want the new habits to be obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, just as James Clear points out in his book Atomic Habits. So our habits are the vehicle that bring us to our goal, and the better built the vehicle is, the easier, smoother, and faster we'll get there. But we also need something to power this vehicle, and that's motivation. Motivation is the fuel that keeps us going. It's up to us to harness our motivation and use it consistently to power our habit vehicle so we can maintain forward momentum. We must always keep our why running in the background of our mind. So reviewing your goals and your new identity should be a regular ritual. If you've done your job in building habits that are executable and sustainable with minimal friction, we won't have to rely too heavily on motivation as our fuel. In other words, we want a super efficient vehicle that won't require an enormous gas tank to keep it going. Now, the path to your goal won't be uniform. There'll be easy times where your habits will allow you to coast along, and there's also going to be some rocky terrain where you need to burn a little bit more fuel in terms of motivation and call on certain things to keep you going. Motivational tools are about a change in state of mind. They get your mojo going, taking us from inaction to action. We'll need to keep a few of these in mind to call on when the going gets tough. It's like a break glass in case of emergencies type situation. Reread and visualize your goals. Keep the new you in mind, and keep it fresh in your mind. Ideally, do this in a quiet place and bring some intention to the process. You could also use music to elicit a change in state. So have a few go-to songs that you can fire up to keep you going when times get tough. Along the same lines, you could have a cache of video clips that you use to get your juices flowing. Something like a training montage from Rocky or an inspiring athletic performance. Anything that resonates with you would be good for this category. Also, encouragement. Have a friend give you a pep talk, but make sure it's a friend who has a lot of energy and knows what you're trying to accomplish. We can also use variety as a tool. Something as simple as a change of location can add a new flavor to your habit. Trying a new gym or a different grocery store might be just enough to call you to action. Something else you could try is making a bargain with yourself. It's like making a deal to facilitate movement. When you don't feel like training, you could just tell yourself, I'm only going to do the warm-up today and then call it quits. The first step is often the hardest, and chances are, if you make it through the warm-ups, you'll keep going. And if not, well, at least you did your warm-ups, and that's something. You could also sleep it off. And this is a last resort suggestion. Your body might be telling you that rest is the most important thing at the moment, and you might need a nap. The trouble with this suggestion is that it gives certain people the opportunity to be a little bit lazy. Here's the question you want to ask yourself. Have I been a man or woman of action lately? And if the answer is yes, then okay, go take a nap, recharge your battery. If the answer is no, then you should probably get your butt in gear and put in some work. Our motivational tools are meant to increase intensity because intensity defeats resistance. Let's talk about navigating our journey. We'll keep in mind that progress won't be linear. We're going to track our quantitative and qualitative metrics, and if we find that we're on track, well, fantastic. Stick to our habits and keep going. If we're not making progress as expected, we'll need to course correct, and we do that by analyzing our habits. The question is, are we sticking to the habit a high percentage of the time? If the answer is yes, then we likely have an insufficient or incorrect habit. We'll have to alter it or maybe change it entirely. If we're not sticking to the habit and we think that the habit is useful, we've got to find a way to stick to it. And that comes down to eliminating friction and streamlining the behavior. The journey to your goal is kind of like an airplane in flight. It's never dead on course. It's always a little off course and then course correcting. The same goes for us. We're constantly going to be making adjustments along the way. There's no perfect or easy journey, but if we're persistent, we'll get to our destination. To wrap it up, real sustainable change is possible. All we need is some motivation and an effective system to get us to our goals. Remember, if you haven't had success in the past, it wasn't you that failed, it was your system that failed. If you want to lose weight and get lean in 2024, give these strategies a try. I know it can be done, and I know that you can do it. For more detail on these strategies or some personalized coaching, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to be part of your success story. And I'm hoping to see a new and improved you in 2024.